I manifested a toxic relationship, which I'm just getting now out of, and maybe some of you remember my other video where I was like, I manifested my boyfriend in 2 weeks, which is somewhere in my channel. That was 2.5 years ago, and I'm now, well, I have gotten out of that relationship about a month ago, more or less, and there was like a lot of, not like per se cheating, but like a lot of like lines crossed, boundaries crossed and everything. And you might wonder why. Why would you think that you manifested this amazing person and then it ended up becoming really toxic? Like what happened? I had another like really toxic narcissistic relationship like maybe 6 years ago, and after that one I thought I had learned my lesson. And maybe you're in the same boat where like maybe this is your first toxic relationship, maybe you had one before, you thought you learned, you had some healthy relationships in the middle like me, and then at some point you ended up manifesting another toxic person. Why does this happen? So this is going to be a bit from my experience, but I feel like maybe some other people can relate to this. But something that I do realize is that my first narcissistic ex was a very overt narcissistic. So like you could see him from far. He did certain things that you could really see where he was being narcissistic, and like everyone around me was like, this person's not good for you, these things that he's doing are not good. But he was like so open and so openly manipulative that it was easier to detect, even though I also stayed like for 3.5 years in there. But it was my first relationship. I was 20. I just was way more immature and I was way more codependent than what I am now. After that relationship, I was like, I want to have someone healthy and this and that. And I did have a few healthy relationships after that taught me a lot and that made me learn a lot about myself, about what I wanted, what I didn't want. Where like relationships, like they ended, they were painful, but because it was just not meant to be with that person, or we were not like fully compatible in a lot of things, but at least they were like peaceful. And I was like, this is a breath of fresh air. Like I feel like I finally healed that part of me. But I think that so when you make a list of something that you want to manifest, you know, like perfect partner, soulmate, whatever. And when I made that list, like in the one that I showed in the other video that I did 2 years ago when I manifested this person, I feel like when you want to manifest your highest and best like soulmate kind of connection, you all know that there's this one law called law of polarity and law of attraction. That means like in order for you to manifest this, you also need to go through like the contrary, like the opposite. Like if you want to manifest like all the money in the world, you need to be able to, like the more money you want to manifest, the more like lack you need to also experience so that you can kind of like level everything out, because we live in like a dual world in a 3D reality. So I do, like a lot of people might think like, oh, I thought I manifested my soulmate and I manifested another trashy situation. Why did this happen to me? And I feel like in my case, this happened to me because like I had some wounds that just needed like my rejection and abandonment wounds were something that I worked through in my first relationship. I worked through them in other relationships, but not as intensely as you would in a toxic relationship, because I feel like toxic relationships just bring out kind of like the worst in you and like the worst part of your shadow self, so that you can confront it, heal it, and then you're able from that healed place to manifest what you want. And I feel like this relationship, even though it was toxic, even though I was with like a covert narcissist, which for 10 months, he did not show his true self. So I just was with a person who like, he had minor red flags, but they were so little that I was like, this is probably nothing. Now I know which things I need to kind of like, the moment I see this little thing, I'm out, I'm out the door. But something that I do realize is that my rejection and my abandonment wounds, they were still there. I had healed part of it through other relationships, but not maybe fully them. But through this relationship, I did the work from the beginning. And that's something that I'm very proud of, because even though I was in it for like 2.5 years, even though there were moments where like I did let things pass, I didn't hold my boundaries like super strong as I should have, I do feel like through the relationship, I continued to do the work on myself. For example, like let's say, for example, this person was like, oh, I don't have time to see you right now. Instead of maybe seeing that as a red flag and be like, oh, he doesn't care enough about me or this or that, I was like, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe it's something that maybe I should be able to like spend time by myself, or not be as codependent, or figure out why I'm having anxiety in these moments. And obviously in this case, I'm not saying this so that you blame yourself, because like when you're with a narcissist, it's not your fault. Like it's definitely not your fault. It's a them problem and it's not a you problem. Usually a lot of relationships you're going to be like, well, it takes two to bring the problem to the table. But when you're with a narcissist, it's literally a them problem and not a you problem. But you can look at yourself and be like, okay, what wounds do I have inside of me that brought me to be in this situation and to allow this type of mistreatment? So in my case, as I said, like he presented a facade, a mask of who he was for like 10 months in the relationship, where he was like prioritizing me, showering me with love and affection and everything and doing everything perfectly. And after those 10 months, the excuses, the manipulation, the gaslighting started to happen. But I was so deep into that it was hard for me at the beginning to kind of like see things. But since I was constantly doing the work during that time where like, maybe I didn't see things from the beginning, like from the first moment, to be like, oh, he said this thing and like I used to trust myself in these areas and now I suddenly don't trust this, like what's happening here? It took me some time to see these things, but I feel like during the relationship I managed to, because I have this thing where like if you have abandonment wounds and rejection wounds, you will have the tendency to abandon yourself and reject yourself in order to please someone else. And obviously, like with this person, he came to the point where like he kind of positioned himself here in a pedestal and I was a bit under that, and I would trust him over me, or I would do things for him instead of for me. But over time, I kept on working on myself. I kept on doing my things, even if he, like in comparison to my first relationship, like whenever like they would maybe be like, oh, you're not important, or like I'm not gonna hang out with you this weekend because this is more important to me or something. I was just like, oh, I'm not worthy, oh, I'm not this, oh, I'm not that, and I would just feel bad about myself and stay home and just like allow that person to like really mistreat me. In this relationship, I feel like whenever he didn't want to hang out with me, whenever, I don't know, he made excuses like, oh, I need to work, or I need to do this, or he would just like say whatever, I would be like, okay, this is causing me anxiety, so I'm gonna like work on soothing my anxiety. I'm gonna hang out with friends. I'm gonna continue like working on my hobbies, working on my YouTube channel, working on my things. So at least I continue to kind of like work for other things, which I feel like when you are in a manipulative relationship is very hard. But I kept on like working on me, working on my self-esteem and working on that to be like, I need to continue choosing myself, because I know and I have this feeling that this person is kind of like gaslighting me and manipulating me and like making me feel bad for me choosing myself, because whenever I chose myself, he would be like, oh, like this is more important to you than me, this is this and that. But the fact that I kept on working on the side of me is what I think ended up making the relationship explode, and this person kind of like being tired of me, because it was like, I cannot get anything more out of this girl, I'm done, I'm gonna find another victim or something. And that's something that I have to say that I'm very proud of, even though it took me 2.5 years like of being in this relationship. I feel like toxic relationships teach you so much about yourself and teach you so much about the other person. Maybe it's also like a problem of like, if I had stronger boundaries and if I had a better like self-esteem, or if I noticed things from like the very beginning, I would have probably left earlier. Or maybe the lesson for me was also to kind of like leave earlier instead of just like being there, like allowing certain things to happen, and for me to just, you know, continue to tolerate certain things. But the thing is, like, I did tolerate certain things, which I'm not proud of, obviously. But I do have to say that I know that being in a narcissistic relationship is not an easy thing, and it's not easy to leave that, because you don't realize things. They gaslight you, and there's a point where you're like, how the fuck did I end up in this situation? And it's very hard for people to go out. But what's something a lot of people have asked me, like, how the fuck do you leave a narcissistic relationship, is like, when you're there, because a lot of people cannot get out, and because the person will come back and then they will promise you the world. And some of you know that last year, I don't know if I ever talked about this, but this person and I last year already had a breakup, because it came to a point where he was kind of like trying to get the upper hand with me, where he was like, oh, well, I want to have a break with you, I want to take some time apart, because like your needs are kind of like too much for me, and I just need to focus on like his exams and whatever. And he asked for a break, he asked for a time apart, and after 2 weeks of that break, it took me maybe 2 weeks, but after 2 weeks of that break, I was like, fuck that, I don't need to be with someone who doesn't want to choose me and doesn't want to prioritize me, so I'm just breaking up with him. I'm not gonna like wait out whatever unlimited time he wants for him to do whatever he wants, like, not doing that. And the moment I did that, he immediately switched, and he was like, no, but you're the most important thing, I want to work on this, let's go to couples counseling, let's do this, let's do that. So it was like you wanted some time apart, and then for the past like 2 weeks that you were supposed to be working on your exams and everything, you've been like chasing me, which is like, this makes no fucking sense. But when that moment came and I spent 2 weeks apart from him, and it only took me 2 weeks, because I feel like 2 weeks is not a lot of time. It only took me 2 weeks to kind of like reclaim my power and come back to that place. I was like, I'm not that bad. I actually feel relief from being like away from this person. I'm just gonna break up with him because I want to be with someone who values me. And over this 2 years, I've met amazing friends. I've continued to like work on my work, which is like go from like working from a company to freelancing, which is something I was scared of doing, finding social media clients, doing like TikTok strategies and all that I do. And I feel like even though this relationship was always kind of bringing me down, I was always kind of like fighting to be like, I'm gonna find good friends that keep me here. I'm gonna have a good job that keeps me here. I'm gonna manifest money that keeps me here. I manifested a lot of opportunities that keep me here. And at some point, this was stronger than this, and this person had to let me go. And he was actually the one who was like, no, I feel like we're not happy anymore. We're not this, we're not that. And at the beginning, I felt bad, and I thought he made me feel like I was the problem. But then I realized, like, no, I was never the problem. I just kept on elevating and healing and growing, and he just stayed there. At some point, he realized he couldn't control me anymore. And he tried to make me feel bad and say, like, oh, you used to be different. It was so nice when you didn't have money, because he even said that, like, oh, you were different when you didn't have money. And the moment you started to have money and a social media presence, you became, like, cocky and something. And it's like, I don't feel like I have ever been cocky. I've always been me, and like maybe I gained some confidence, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, that's actually a good thing. And that I lost weight, and that to him was also a problem, because he said when I was fatter, I was like, we were happier or something. I feel like it's just what he was saying underneath all of that is like, you were easier to control back then, and now that you're not, I cannot do anything, and you're too good for me. And I've just became too good for him. I do think, or I do want to think sometimes, that the person that I met at the beginning in this person is someone that had the potential to be all of these things, because he did also work on a lot of projects during our time. It's not that he pretended to do certain things and never did anything. He did a lot of things, and I saw them happening. So that was what made me trust him. But I feel like he has a lot of healing to do that he just doesn't want to confront. And the fact that I guess he like maybe grew at some point a little bit through our connection, but at some point it's like we met at this point, I continued growing and he just stayed there. Or maybe he followed me a little bit, but at some point it was too much for him, and it was something that he didn't want to do, you know. But yeah, as I said, like maybe this video is a little bit all over the place, but what I wanted to say is that through this breakup, I'm realizing that I have wounds that I still need to work through, and I still need to continue to heal. But I feel like this breakup is not that I didn't learn anything because of the fact that I ended up in another toxic relationship. I just feel like sometimes toxic relationships can be the most healing ones if you're able to heal when you are in them, because they bring out kind of like your worst and your worst shadows. But as I said, like I used to have like the craziest, biggest rejection and abandonment wounds. And then in this relationship, I did abandon myself a little bit in the beginning for this person because of codependency. But over the relationship, I learned how to do more things alone, because this person sometimes didn't want to hang out with me, sometimes didn't want to do things with me. I continued to make new friends. I continued to have new hobbies. I continued to kind of like focus on me, even though it was like extra hard being with someone who gaslit me, and not only him, his parents as well. But over time, that just brought me to a point where like I know that now if I go out into the world and I meet someone else, I'm going to be at a better level, and it's going to be even harder for someone to gaslight me, to make me feel like they are more important than me and that my needs are the first thing, and I'm going to be better with boundaries and all of that. So, and I especially wanted to make this video since, as some of you know, like I broke up with him, and I told in another video like, oh, I manifested this person who was perfect for me. I do feel like I manifested this person because I was meant to heal through all of these things that I needed to heal from, to be able to manifest the real person. And I mean, no one ever knows if maybe this person ends up being my person, and maybe, I don't know, through this breakup, they do the healing, they do realize what they missed, and they do the work that they need to be doing. No one knows, because maybe no, I mean, I'm not saying he's a full narcissist. He does have like a lot of narcissistic tendencies, and I can do another video talking about like all of the things that he did, if anyone, like if that would be helpful for anyone, for you to see. Because I feel like overt narcissists are easier to spot. Covert narcissists are very hard to spot. But I guess like because I got gaslit by him and then gaslit by his family, I just saw a lot of like signs of things happening. And especially because we had a break last year, whenever you go through a breakup with a narcissist, like the weeks after, you start to become really angry and you start to remember a lot of things, and you're like, he did this and this and this and this, which in the relationship maybe you don't see as clearly. But I wanted to do this because maybe you thought you manifested your dream partner, your soulmate, whatever. And it ended up being someone toxic, and you're like, why the fuck did I manifest this? I did it wrong, I did like this. I don't think you did anything wrong. I just feel like if you manifested that person, it was what you needed for you to heal certain things, learn certain things, for you in the future manifest the right person for you. So don't feel bad. Don't feel like you're doing it wrong. I feel like a lot of people just stick with the law of attraction or law of assumption, and they don't think about the law of rhythm. I think it's called the law of polarity, which is like you have to like experience both ends of something, like the good and the bad. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say today. I hope this video was helpful for anyone going through this. And as always, like if you have suggestions for other videos that you want me to make, leave them below. And I wish you guys a great day.